Imagine standing before the most powerful king in the world, with your life hanging in the balance. You're given one simple command: bow before a golden statue or face certain death. What would you do? Long ago, in 605 to 562 BCE, in the heart of the vast Babylonian Empire, a great king ruled with absolute authority. His name was Nebuchadnezzar, a powerful and ambitious ruler who had conquered nations and built one of the most magnificent cities in history. Towering walls, grand palaces, and the famous hanging gardens made Babylon a wonder of the ancient world. But the king's greatest display of power was yet to come. One day, Nebuchadnezzar issued a decree that would test the loyalty of every man and woman in his kingdom. He commanded the construction of a colossal golden statue, 90 feet tall and gleaming under the Babylonian sun. This statue, a symbol of his rule, was to be worshipped by all. A royal herald proclaimed throughout the land, "At the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, and every kind of music, all people must bow before the golden image. Those who refuse shall be cast into a fiery furnace." From the highest nobles to the lowest servants, fear gripped the hearts of the people. No one dared to defy the king's command, except for 3 men. Their names were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were faithful servants of the one true God, and they knew they could bow only to him. As the music played and the crowds fell to their knees, these 3 men remained standing, unwavering in their faith. But their defiance would not go unnoticed. Whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd. The royal officials and advisors, eager to prove their loyalty to the king, wasted no time in bringing an urgent report to Nebuchadnezzar. "O king, live forever," they said, bowing low before the throne. "You issued a decree that at the sound of the music, all must bow before the golden statue, or they will be thrown into the fiery furnace. But there are certain men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who refuse to obey. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image you have set up." The king's face darkened with fury. His pride was wounded and his authority challenged. "Bring them to me at once," he commanded. Moments later, the 3 young men stood before the most powerful ruler on earth. The golden statue loomed in the distance, a constant reminder of the choice they had refused to make. Nebuchadnezzar glared down at them. "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image I have set up?" His voice was calm, but the anger beneath it was unmistakable. "I will give you one last chance. When you hear the sound of the instruments, bow down and worship the statue. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. And then, what god will be able to rescue you from my hand?" The court fell silent. All eyes were on the 3 men. Would they bend under the pressure? Would they reconsider to save their own lives? But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not waver. With steady voices, they answered the king. "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." The boldness of their words sent a wave of shock through the court. The king's face twisted with rage. How dare they defy him in his own palace? He would make an example of them. At once he ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual, and the strongest soldiers in his army to bind the 3 men and throw them into the fire. Their fate seemed sealed, but what happened next would leave the entire kingdom in awe. The soldiers, strong and battle-hardened, bound Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego with thick ropes. The king's command was urgent, his fury unmatched. As the fiery furnace roared behind them, its heat intensified to 7 times its normal strength, sending waves of scorching air into the palace courtyard. With a final order from Nebuchadnezzar, the soldiers seized the 3 men and dragged them toward the inferno. But as they approached, the flames surged violently, consuming the very men who had bound them. In an instant, the soldiers fell lifeless, overtaken by the unbearable heat. And yet, through the smoke and fire, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego fell into the furnace, their fate seemingly sealed. Silence fell over the court as the flames raged. The crowd stood frozen in horror. The fire burned so fiercely that none dared to approach. Surely, no one could survive such a punishment. But then, something incredible happened. Nebuchadnezzar, seated on his royal throne, peered into the furnace. His eyes narrowed in confusion, then widened in shock. He stood abruptly, his voice breaking through the stunned silence. "Did we not throw 3 men bound into the fire?" he demanded. His advisors, still trembling from the heat, answered quickly, "Yes, O king, 3 men were cast into the flames." Nebuchadnezzar's face filled with awe as he pointed toward the furnace. "Then why do I see 4 men walking freely in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. The 3 men were alive. Not only that, but they were walking in the fire as if untouched by its deadly heat. And beside them stood a radiant figure, one who shone with a heavenly light, a presence so powerful that even the mighty king of Babylon was left speechless. Nebuchadnezzar, overcome with amazement, rushed closer to the furnace and called out in a trembling voice, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." And then, before the eyes of the entire kingdom, the 3 men stepped out of the flames. Their robes were untouched, their hair was unscorched, not even the smell of smoke clung to them. The crowd could not believe what they had seen. It was undeniable. These men had been saved by a power greater than any king, any fire, or any earthly decree. And in that moment, King Nebuchadnezzar knew he had witnessed a miracle. The crowd stood in stunned silence. Moments ago, they had expected to witness a grim execution, yet now, before their very eyes, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego emerged from the fiery furnace, completely unharmed. Their clothes were intact, their hair unsinged, and there was not even the faintest scent of smoke on them. Nebuchadnezzar, the mighty king who had commanded all to worship his golden image, was now the one humbled. He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the 3 men who had defied him, not in rebellion, but in faith. And then, before the gathered officials, governors, and nobles of Babylon, he spoke. "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego," his voice rang out. "He has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied my command, choosing to obey their God rather than worship any other. No other God can save in this way." Then, in a moment no one could have foreseen, the king who once demanded worship for his own creation issued a new decree. "Let it be known throughout the land. Anyone who speaks against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be punished, for there is no God who can save like this." The same men who had once stood as prisoners now stood as living testimonies of God's power, their faith unshaken. And instead of being cast out or punished, they were honored. Nebuchadnezzar promoted them to even higher positions in the kingdom, elevating them before the very officials who had accused them. The story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego became a lasting testimony, passed down through generations, a reminder that true faith does not bow to fear, that God is able to deliver, and that even in the fire he is with his people. And so the 3 men who walked through the fire walked into history, proving that when you stand for God, you never stand alone. The story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is more than just an ancient tale. It is a powerful reminder of faith, courage, and the unfailing presence of God. These three men faced the most terrifying trial of their lives. They stood before the most powerful ruler on earth with a blazing furnace ready to consume them. Yet they did not waver. They did not compromise. Their faith was unshaken because they knew that God was greater than any king, any threat, or any fire. But what makes their faith even more extraordinary is not just their belief that God could save them. It was their trust in Him, even if He didn't. They said, "Our God is able to save us, but even if He does not, we will not bow." That is the kind of faith that moves mountains, the kind of faith that changes history. And what about us today? We may not face a fiery furnace, but we all face trials, moments when we are pressured to compromise, to conform, or to turn away from what we know is right. Will we stand firm like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Will we trust God even when the outcome is uncertain? Their story teaches us that God is always with us, even in the fire. When we face challenges, when we feel surrounded by difficulty, we can take heart because we do not stand alone. Just as God walked with them in the flames, He walks with us in our struggles. And in the end, our faith will be rewarded. Our trials will become testimonies, and our lives will glorify the one who never leaves us nor forsakes us. So, the next time your faith is tested, remember, stand firm, trust in God, and know that even in the fire, He is with you. If this story has inspired you, let us know in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a time when God showed up in your life in an unexpected way? We'd love to hear your testimony. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Animated Gospel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Share this video with someone who needs encouragement today, and let's continue spreading the message of faith, courage, and God's unfailing love. Thank you for watching, and remember, when you stand for God, you never stand alone. See you in the next story.